Ever get that feeling like, maybe the rug could be pulled out from under us
Oh,
financially?
yeah.
Like everything we think we know about money could just
Yeah,
poof,
absolutely.
vanish.
Just scary thought.
Well, that's what's making gold the
Yeah.
hottest ticket in town right now.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to dive deep into why.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic for sure.
So we're talking about financial expert Mark Moss
Okay.
and his YouTube video, The Hidden Crisis Behind Gold Surge with a little question mark, Paper Gold Collapse.
Okay. Interesting.
He makes the case that this isn't just your typical gold rally.
Right.
It's a potential seismic shift in the global financial landscape.
Mhm.
So our mission today is to really figure out what's driving this whole gold rush thing,
Okay.
why some people think that the traditional financial systems are cracking,
Right.
and what it all means for your own financial decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Because everybody's got money or trying to make money or
Right.
worried about their money. So
Exactly.
this is something that affects everyone.
So Mark starts by highlighting this crazy surge in gold prices.
Okay.
46% in less than a year.
Wow.
That's more than double the gains of even those like high-flying tech stocks on the Nasdaq.
I mean, that's
Gold is outperforming everything.
yeah, that's huge.
I've been following the markets for a while, and even I'm surprised by how quickly things are changing.
Yeah, it's definitely signaled that something's up.
Exactly.
When you see that kind of movement in gold, it usually means that there's a lack of confidence in the traditional monetary system.
Okay, so people are looking for a safe haven.
Right.
Gold has historically been that safe haven.
Exactly. Yeah. People flock to gold when they're uncertain about the future.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Mark shows this chart of central banks worldwide
Okay.
buying record amounts of gold.
Wow.
China, especially, is on a 17-month buying spree.
Hmm.
And they're even selling off U.S. treasuries to buy more gold.
So they're really
I mean, what are they seeing that we're not?
Yeah, they're making a statement with that, for sure. Central banks, they're usually very cautious.
Right.
So when they make a move this big,
Yeah.
it definitely raises eyebrows.
Yeah, like they're preparing for something.
Right.
Hedging their bets against potential instability in the current financial system.
Exactly. It's like they're looking at the world and thinking, maybe we need to diversify our holdings a little bit.
Right.
Get a little bit more gold in there just in case.
So why are central banks suddenly acting like they're prepping for some doomsday scenario?
Right.
I mean, what's changed?
Well, there are a couple of major events that have really shaken things up.
Okay.
First, all that money printing that happened post-2020,
Oh, yeah.
that really eroded trust in currencies.
Right. Like everyone's realizing that
Yeah.
their digital money isn't as secure as they thought it was.
Right, exactly. It's like all of a sudden people are waking up and realizing,
Yeah.
wait a minute, this money that I have in my bank account is just numbers on a screen.
And it can be manipulated.
Exactly. And it can be devalued. And,
Oh, yeah.
What happened in the past can happen again.
And the second event, I mean, it's got to be the Russia-Ukraine war, right?
Oh, absolutely.
When those Russian assets got frozen,
Yeah.
that sent shockwaves through the entire global financial system.
I mean, can you imagine, waking up one day and
Yeah.
all of your assets are just gone frozen
Gone.
because of something that you may or may not agree with?
Right. It was a stark reminder that even in our digital world,
Yeah.
savings aren't always safe from geopolitical storms.
Right. Nobody thought that could actually happen
Yeah.
in this day and age, but it did.
So it's like central banks are saying, okay, we need something tangible,
Right.
something outside the system that we can rely on.
Something real, something that you can hold in your hand.
Yeah, and that something is gold.
Exactly. Gold has been a store of value for thousands of years.
Right, it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
So Mark dives into the nuts and bolts of the gold market.
Okay.
And he starts by talking about these two main players.
Okay.
The London Bullion Market Association, or LBMA,
Uh-huh.
and the U.S. COMEX.
Right.
He says gold is flowing out of London at an unprecedented rate
Wow.
and heading straight to the U.S.
Interesting.
And get this, the LBMA claims to hold 279 million ounces of gold,
Okay.
but only 36 million ounces are actually available for withdrawal.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a massive discrepancy.
It makes you wonder where all that gold really is.
Yeah, I mean, where's the rest of it, right?
Yeah, that sounds like a massive red flag to me.
Yeah, it's definitely a cause for concern.
It's like they're playing a shell game with the gold supply.
Well, that's where this concept of rehypothecation comes in.
Okay, rehypothecation.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but basically what it means is that the same gold gets lent and relent multiple times,
Oh, wow.
creating a paper gold market that's potentially 100 to 500 times larger than the actual physical gold that's hacking it.
Hold on, are we saying that there are hundreds of claims on the same bar of gold?
Essentially, yes.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is a very complex system, but that's basically what's happening.
Wow.
It's all built on trust, and the assumption that everyone won't try to withdraw their gold all at once.
Right. But what happens if everyone does?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole system could just collapse.
It's a risk that some analysts are very worried about, especially with the growing demand for physical gold.
Right. Okay, so if everyone starts asking for their physical gold,
Yeah,
the whole system could collapse.
it's a possibility.
The whole rehypothecation thing sounds like something straight out of a financial thriller.
It does have a certain dramatic element to it, doesn't it?
So if London and the US are playing this risky game with paper gold,
Yeah.
where did China fit into all of this?
Well, China has their own game going on
Okay.
with the Shanghai Gold Exchange, or SGE.
Okay, the SGE.
And here's where things get really
Oh,
interesting.
listening.
The SGE is physically settled,
Okay.
meaning traders can actually demand and receive their physical gold.
Wow, so China's playing by a different set of rules.
They are indeed.
You can actually get your hands on your gold.
Yes.
If you trade on the SGE, that's a huge difference from those cash-settled markets in the West.
It creates a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, they're essentially playing the Western system against itself.
To a certain extent, yes, it's certainly throwing a wrench into the traditional dynamics of the gold market.
Right.
And it raises questions about who will ultimately control the narrative.
Now, Mark makes this fascinating comparison between what's happening today
Yeah,
and the 1960s London gold pool.
okay.
Back then, 8 central banks banded together to try and control the price of gold
Right.
to maintain the Bretton Woods system.
They were trying to keep the system afloat.
Right, but it didn't work out too well for them, did it?
Not in the long run, no.
What happened?
Well, the demand for physical gold just kept growing,
Okay.
and people started losing faith in the paper promises.
Right, so they couldn't keep up with the demand.
Exactly. The system was ultimately unsustainable.
Wow, so are we seeing history repeat itself?
It's certainly possible there are definitely some parallels.
Yeah, this situation with China and the Western paper gold system.
Yeah.
Are we heading for a similar meltdown?
Well, we're seeing this growing demand for physical gold amidst doubts about the stability of the existing financial order.
Right, and that suggests that people are looking for something solid.
Yeah.
Something tangible.
Absolutely.
In a world that feels increasingly uncertain.
It's a natural human response to uncertainty.
Okay, so we've got central banks hoarding gold, a paper gold system that seems like it's on shaky ground,
Right.
and China making power plays with physical gold.
It's a fascinating geopolitical and financial trauma unfolding.
What does all of this mean for the average person trying to make sense of this potential financial earthquake?
Right.
Should we be running to buy gold right now?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say run, but it's definitely a time to pay attention. The key takeaway here is that gold is in high demand, and that's driven by a number of factors. Central bank buying,
Right.
distrust in fiat currencies,
Uh-huh.
and this potential breaking point in the paper gold system.
So gold seems like a good bet right now.
It's certainly something to consider as part of a diversified portfolio.
But are there any downsides to holding gold?
Well, gold does have its drawbacks.
Okay,
It's not very liquid, and it doesn't generate any income.
right.
It just sits there.
Yeah, and are there any other options that we should be considering?
Well, there are other ways to hedge against inflation and financial instability.
Okay,
We'll explore those in the next part of our deep dive.
sounds good.
But for now, it's important to remember that gold is sending a signal.
Okay,
It's telling us that something is shifting in the global financial landscape,
right.
and that's something worth paying attention to.
It definitely is.
So stay tuned.
We'll be right back. Okay, so we've established that gold is sending us a signal.
Yeah.
A kind of canary in the coal mine for the global financial system.
Right.
But gold isn't the only story here.
No.
Mark Moss also points out some fascinating implications for the U.S. dollar, which has been the world's reserve currency for decades.
Right, for a long time, yeah.
Could this gold rush actually threaten the dollar's dominance?
I think it's definitely a possibility worth considering.
Really?
The dollar has been the king of the global financial jungle for so long.
Yeah.
But things might be changing, and this gold rush
Yeah.
is a symptom of that change.
Mark specifically mentions China
Uh-huh.
and their potential strategy to back their currency with gold.
Oh, wow.
Now, that would be a huge shakeup.
Yeah, that would be a major shift.
What would a world with a gold-backed Chinese yuan even look like?
Well, it would certainly challenge the existing power dynamics.
Yeah,
If China, with its massive economic engine,
right.
decided to create a gold-backed yuan,
Yeah.
it could trigger a shift away from the dollar as the primary reserve currency.
Wow, that's a huge concept to wrap my head around.
It is. It's a big idea.
What would that mean for the average person?
Right.
Would our dollar suddenly be worth less?
Well, it's hard to say for sure how things would play out,
Yeah.
but it could lead to a more multipolar world
Okay.
with several major currencies competing for dominance.
So not just the dollar being king of the hill.
Exactly, yeah, a more level playing field.
Okay.
And that could impact everything from international trade
Uh-huh.
to the value of the dollar
Right.
to the prices we pay for goods and services here at home.
Okay, so if we're potentially headed for this major financial shakeup,
Yeah,
what can people do to prepare?
right. That's the question everyone's asking.
Besides maybe stocking up on canned goods and bottled water.
Yeah, well, panicking never helps.
Right.
But it's always wise to have a diversified portfolio.
Okay, diversification.
Exactly. Spread your risk across different asset classes.
Okay.
Stocks, bonds, real estate.
Yeah.
And yes, even precious metals like gold.
Mark Moss really hammers home the importance of holding physical gold,
Yeah.
especially with all this talk about the paper gold market being a house of cards.
It does make you wonder, right?
Yeah, he even says there are rumors about the paper gold market being 100 to 500 times larger than the actual physical gold supply.
If everyone suddenly decided to cash in their paper gold for the real thing,
Yeah,
would there even be enough to go around?
that's a scary thought.
It is.
No wonder people are scrambling to get their hands on physical gold.
Yeah, it's understandable.
But Mark also mentions that getting your hands on physical gold
Uh-huh.
isn't exactly a walk in the park.
No, it's not as easy as you might think.
What do you mean?
Well, there are all sorts of hoops to jump through.
Like what?
Mark outlines this whole labyrinthine system
Okay.
involving futures contracts,
Uh-huh.
delivery notices, warehouse receipts,
Wow.
even restrictions on which depositories are approved.
It's like they're making it intentionally difficult
Yeah, it can seem that way.
to actually take possession of your gold.
Right, there are definitely barriers to entry.
What are they so afraid of?
Well, it does raise some legitimate concerns about transparency
Yeah.
and the potential for manipulation within the system.
Okay, so let's say someone cites to take the plunge and buy physical gold.
Okay.
What are the downsides?
Well, first off, there are the costs
Okay.
associated with storage, insurance, transportation.
Right. Gold is heavy.
Exactly. It needs to be stored securely,
Yeah.
which can get expensive.
That makes sense. And what about selling it later?
Yeah,
Is that a hassle?
it can be. Yeah.
Really?
Mark points out that if you withdraw your physical gold for personal storage,
Uh-huh.
it might lose its COMEX good delivery designation,
Okay.
which could make it harder to resell at market prices.
So it almost feels like the system is designed to keep your gold locked up
Right, it can feel that way.
in their system.
Yeah, and it certainly feeds into this growing distrust of the traditional financial system.
And it's not just about physical gold, right?
No.
Mark also talks about the increasing demand for gold futures contracts
Okay.
that allow for physical delivery.
Right, so people want the option to actually take possession of the gold.
Yeah, he mentions this thing called backwardation,
Mm,
where people are willing to pay a premium
yeah,
to get their hands on physical gold now,
right, they want it now.
rather than waiting.
It's a sign that people are losing faith in paper promises
Wow.
and want something tangible, something they can hold in their hands.
So it's almost like we're witnessing a modern-day gold rush.
Yeah, it does have that feel to it, doesn't it?
But instead of panning for nuggets in a river,
Right.
people are trying to extract their gold
Yeah,
from this complex and potentially very fragile
it is a complex system,
financial system.
and the stakes are high.
Yeah, it's not just about making a quick buck. It's
Yeah.
about safeguarding your wealth
Right.
and preparing for a potential paradigm shift
Yeah.
in the global financial order.
It's about taking control of your financial future
Right.
and understanding the forces that are shaping the world around us.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Gold, central banks, China, the US dollar.
Yeah,
This whole paper gold versus physical gold dilemma.
lots to unpack.
Before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the world is changing
Okay.
and the old ways of doing things might not be sustainable anymore.
Mm,
This gold rush is a symptom of that change.
yeah.
It's a signal to pay attention,
Okay.
to diversify your assets,
Uh-huh.
and to consider alternatives to the traditional financial system.
So it's not just about gold.
Right.
It's about being open to new ideas
Exactly.
and new ways of thinking about money and value.
We need to be adaptable and informed to navigate the changes that are coming our way.
Good advice. All right, so we talked about gold. We talked about central banks kind of playing musical chairs with the global reserve currency
Right.
and this whole paper gold versus physical gold showdown.
Yeah.
But there's another player in this game that we haven't really talked about yet,
Okay.
Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah, Bitcoin.
Mark Moss sees Bitcoin as a kind of digital gold. What do you think about that comparison? Is Bitcoin really the gold of the digital age?
Well, it's an interesting comparison, for sure, and one that a lot of people are making these days.
Yeah.
Bitcoin does share some key characteristics with gold.
Okay, like what?
It's finite,
Okay.
it's decentralized,
Right.
and it's resistant to government control.
Right. It can't be manipulated in the same way that
Right.
fiat currencies can.
Exactly.
And like gold, it's seen as a hedge against inflation and a store of value.
Yeah, people are looking for alternatives to the traditional system.
And Mark points out that Bitcoin has gained traction not just with individual investors, but also with institutions and even some central banks.
It's going more mainstream.
He even mentioned that 21 U.S. states are either already using Bitcoin as a reserve asset
Wow.
or are considering doing so.
That's significant.
I mean, that seems like a pretty big deal, right?
It is. It suggests that governments are at least exploring alternatives to the current system.
Yeah, they're open to it.
And Bitcoin is definitely on their radar.
So the world is
The
changing.
world is changing. The old financial order is being challenged.
But Bitcoin is still pretty volatile, right?
Yeah, that's true.
The price swings can be pretty wild. Isn't that a big risk?
Well, volatility is a characteristic of emerging markets,
Okay.
and Bitcoin is still relatively young.
Right.
But as adoption grows and the infrastructure matures,
Yeah.
we could see that volatility decrease.
Okay, so it'll stabilize over time.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, remember, the internet was once considered a risky and volatile investment, too.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And look at it now.
So is Bitcoin a high risk, high reward kind of thing?
It could be, yeah.
Like if you're willing to stomach the roller coaster ride,
Yeah.
it could pay off big time.
It's definitely a potential high-reward scenario for those who understand the technology
Right.
and are comfortable with the risks.
But it's important to do your research and invest responsibly.
Absolutely. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right, even if that basket is made of digital gold.
Exactly. Diversification is key.
So we've got gold mining stocks, Bitcoin. It's like a whole new wild west of financial options out there.
It's an exciting time to be an investor, that's for sure.
It's exciting and a little bit overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
Mark Moss even goes as far as to call this a financial revolution. He says these happen roughly every 80 years, and we're due for another one.
Interesting.
Do you think he's right? Are we on the verge of a complete financial system reboot?
Well, there's certainly evidence to support that view.
Okay.
I mean, throughout history, we've seen these major financial shifts.
Yeah.
The Bretton Woods Agreement, the gold standard, the rise of fiat currency.
Right.
We're constantly evolving, and it seems like we might be on the cusp of another major transformation.
And the gold rush is just one of the signs.
Exactly.
So if this is a financial revolution, what does victory look like?
Right. What's the end game?
What's the end game here? A new global reserve currency, a return to the gold standard,
Yeah.
the rise of Bitcoin as the world's dominant currency? I mean, what are we even fighting for?
That's the million-dollar question. It's hard to say for sure how things will play out.
Yeah,
But one thing's for certain, the future of money is being written right now.
right.
And it's a story that's going to impact all of us.
Well, it's definitely a story worth watching close.
For sure.
So to bring it all together, it sounds like we're living in a time of great financial uncertainty.
Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns.
Trust in the traditional systems is eroding.
Right. People are losing faith.
Central banks are making big moves.
They're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
And alternatives like gold and Bitcoin are gaining traction.
Yeah, people are looking for options.
It's a time for cautious optimism and informed decision-making, wouldn't you say?
I think that's a great way to put it. It's a time to be proactive, educate yourself, and explore all the options.
Don't be afraid to challenge assumptions and think outside the box.
Absolutely. Old ways of doing things may not work in the new world.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We explored the gold rush, the potential challenges to the U.S. dollar, the rise of Bitcoin, and the possibility of a major financial revolution.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
It's a lot to process, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and some food for thought.
Yeah, hopefully it's given people something to think about.
And hopefully it's sparked your curiosity to learn more about this fascinating and rapidly evolving world of finance.
It's a world that's constantly changing.
That's it for this deep dive.
And we'd love
To hear your thoughts on all of this, what resonated with you? What are you most curious about? Share your comments below and let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, let's keep learning together.
Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.